team, wishing everybody a happy new year. And I'm very happy to bring on the show today. And we saved the best for last. We have the paleo-libertarian, Ilana Mercer, who will be speaking about her latest article. And she writes with WorldNet Daily. She writes for WorldNet Daily. She's on Town Hall, the UNS Review. Great stuff. Great stuff. And she has a new one up there, Meet the Kushners. Little slam there. First couple in waiting. Leftist sleeper cell, Jarvanka. I love it. You should trademark it. Is forcing out the best, brightest from the Trump team. Ilana, welcome to the John Frederick Radio Network.
Hi, Colonel Mike, but I can't take credit for Jarvanka. That is a legitimate coinage of Bannon, Steve Bannon the Great.
Oh, Bannon, okay. Got you.
Who was promptly fired by Jared and Ivanka.
Mm-hmm. I guess there are a lot of people that were fired by them, right?
I think so, yeah. I mean, most of the mega lineup is gone thanks to them, and the trail leads straight to them. The evidence is there, and I quote that in the column.
So let's talk about it. Welcome back. You haven't been on in a while. And
a while, Colonel. It's a year.
You know something? I haven't been on in 6 months. John has been just expanding the network. He just bought his own network. It's WJFN, John Fredericks Network. And he's in Richmond this morning. I'm in Chesapeake, Virginia. And he's in Richmond this morning closing a deal on another network. So I guess he's on his way to owning 2 and getting ready to go to 3. So hopefully, we had dinner last night. Hopefully I'll be back on a lot more often like I used to be than every 6 months, and then I can invite you back on.
Fabulous for him. Always good to hear when a good deplorable is expanding.
Yes. So come on, let's talk about your article. And also, you know, if you don't mind, I'd like to speak also about regulating big tech. I mean, don't you think it's at the point now in America, and, you know, I know you're non-interventionist, and I know you're not about governing expansion, but don't you think at this point these guys like Google and Facebook and so on, shouldn't they be regulated because they're controlling elections, correct?
Well, that's a topic for a different session, and I'd love to come on and talk
definitely.
about that. Very, very important, because there are as big as some economies in certainly in the EU. As a libertarian, I have mixed feelings, but I agree with you that they are definitely a threat, not so much to, not as big as the first couple in waiting right now.
Okay, let's talk about it. So you write about them, and what's the threat? I know Jared's involved in foreign policy, and you ask yourself, well, what's his experience? Go ahead. Please expand.
Well, I don't only think it's experience. I think there's a remarkable silence about the nepotism involved in really hiring your family. But I think perhaps if we on the right had considered the awful eventuality of Hillary winning, heavens forbid, imagine if Chelsea Clinton, who is as liberal as Ivanka, and in fact the two were friends, had been given a position in the administration and was unmovable.
Their hair would be on fire.
What would we have thought or said?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think their hair would be on fire. People would be screaming.
There's a remarkable silence about the Kushners.
Mm-hmm.
It's perplexing.
Well, he has a couple of wins. He's got the movement of the capital, right? And
I think that was Trump. He definitely promised that during the campaign, and I think that's to the credit of the president. But it's quite telling that the midterms, the midterms of the first term of President Trump, have ended in a legislative coup for this very anemic man, who, in my opinion, provides the perfect peg on which the very forceful and ambitious first daughter hangs her ambitions. And it's kind of telling that the legislative victory, which as a libertarian I don't object to, that's the First Step Act, criminal justice reform, goes to Jared Kushner and not to the president's agenda.
Agree. I agree with that. I think the president should have got the kudos. Okay.
Well, no, I mean, the wall, at least. We should have had legislation, in connection with the Make America Great or America First agenda. But that we haven't had. And as I say in the column, the promised land America is without the promised wall.
Mm-hmm.
But we do have liberal legislation, and the Kushners, the Honorable Kushners, as they are listed in the guest list at Davos, they are headed to hobnob with the world globalists.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure that Zuckerman and the rest of the big tech will be there too.
Oh, so they're going. They're on their way to Davos now, huh?
Oh, they were there last year, I believe. I think that's a place for all pushy liberals who want to hobnob with celebrities who are pretty much of the globalist mindset.
Oh, total globalists, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, Trump was, back in the day when I lived in New York, Trump was back then a Democrat, but he was more of the blue dog Democrat,
Yes, a southern Democrat.
Right. He was that brand, but again, doing the business he did in the city that he was, you had to do business with everybody. You know what I mean? And I'm sure when they close the door, him and Chuck Schumer have some great old stories, wise tales, and old stories that they tell. Okay, and he donated to many of these people, but I'm all with you on this nepotism stuff. I'm not into this hierarchy royalty thing. Like, if you're a Bush, we should have another Bush. If you're a Clinton, have another Clinton. And if you're a Trump, we're going to get another Trump. Those days are gone.
Exactly, and the dynastic family. Look, I know that, deplorables should not be ditto heads. We need to, if we want our agenda to get through, and it's getting late in the day, we do have to hold leaders to account. We can't just worship them.
Mm-hmm.
And, the tolerance of this extremely ambitious couple. I mean, Mr. Kushner's national security portfolio has expanded in a way that doesn't match his skills, certainly. I mean, he controls the China, Mexico, Iraq, Israel, and Saudi Arabia portfolio. And to see Ivanka, who's a branding expert, and be briefing South Korea on sanctions against North Korea is scary, to say the least. However, what we have to look at are the facts on the ground. Every single individual associated with a MAGA agenda has been fired, and the firing has been traced to the couple.
So,
especially Ivanka, who booted, or as I say, who gave the chew, as in Jimmy Choo, designer shoes, who gave the chew to Steve Bannon, to John Kelly. She clearly was infuriated by the fact that John Kelly had mentioned that he was sick of the first daughter playing government and would not give Ivanka unfettered access to Daddy, and tried to impose some military-style discipline in the White House. Jeff Sessions is gone. We can't blame the first couple in waiting, the Kushners. But as Heather McDonald, an extremely an arch-conservative, she said that she herself said that the president is taking marching orders from his daughter on matters immigration.
Wow. This is unbelievable. Maybe is that why he's sliding on this wall number? Because, Ilana, the wall number doesn't make sense. Anything under 5 million, it really needs 25. I'm sorry, billion. It really needs 25 to maybe 100 billion. Okay, and this number may be 1.2, 1.5.
Yeah, I mean, 5 billion is a joke, isn't it? I mean, we see the pundits, and really one shouldn't watch them. Really, one shouldn't watch television.
Thank you.
But the pundits harping on the silly number 5 billion, which will give us 200 miles, right?
What I say is it's like 200 feet when you look at the border in perspective. 5 billion. It's costing us I thought it was the number I had from FAIR was $15 billion a year is what the costs are for the illegals coming here and, you know, all the welfare and the aid social programs. I had a guy on the other day, I think it was Sheriff Clark. It was either Sheriff Clark or one of the gentlemen from the Border Council who said it's closer to $115 billion a year we spend on this.
I would absolutely not be surprised, and you cannot put a price on the loss of life.
No,
and that is just tragic. Just this recently, this policeman in California, and to see these sanctuary city sheriffs stand up there and suddenly tout their need to enforce the law is also a little disconcerting, because the entire, state is a sanctuary state for illegality. But of course, Trump had a magnificent immigration agenda, and his position paper was extremely articulate, obviously written by people like Stephen Bannon and Stephen Miller, who, by the way, is consigned to the basement. The other day he was let loose on Wolf Blitzer, and he was absolutely wonderful. You need to watch that segment on CNN. Mm-hmm. When you stand up to liberals, especially the TV talking heads, they back down like babies, and we have not done that. The Trump administration has not articulated the agenda forcefully, because when you have a radical agenda, you have to have the best, the brightest. Mm-hmm. Kirsten Nielsen is extremely bright. She was brought in by Kelly, who was fired. These were bright people who have the words and have the intellect to articulate the MAGA agenda. You did not have that. You just had poor stumblebum Sarah Huckabee issuing the daily apology. And when you have a radical agenda, you can't get away with that.
Right. Well, I believe in my heart Trump is right now handcuffed in some way. And I believe he's really caving on the number. Unless he has something up his sleeve, he's waiting till after the new session, slamming on them. But I wouldn't even put a number like you say. If this thing costs, whether it costs $5 billion, $25 or $100 billion, we have the money. We can print the money if we don't have the money, right? And we can at least give it a good run for the money to stop this from happening. There's nobody from Czechoslovakia running over that border through Mexico.
But Colonel, let me say this back to the immigration agenda: birthright citizenship, moratorium, restriction on legal immigration. Most of the flooding, the swamping of the country, of the ensuring that there will never be another Republican elected is through legal immigration, through the tech companies. We have a massive influx to replace high-tech workers and other workers.
With South Asians.
Absolutely. I mean, the population growth where I live in the tech center in Washington State is not organic. We've had an immense population growth through tech importation and replacement of local workers. It's just the way it goes, and it's legal immigration. Trump had a magnificent position paper, and that's absolutely, we've forgotten about it. The harping on illegality alone is actually quite a distraction.
Yes.
Because we can only speak about, as Heather McDonald has emphasized, Jeff Sessions was the only person who's now fired, of course, who actually was staunch about speaking up for the right of Americans to determine what the character of the country should be. Mm-hmm. And by focusing only on illegality, we let this whole immigration agenda slip, which Trump also ran on. And you tell me, Colonel, what prevented Donald Trump and having the Congress and the Senate and the White House from at least presenting in this, this last term of his, a standalone, pure immigration bill? So it would have been rejected by the the current Congress, the Paul Ryan traitors.
Mm-hmm.
But what was presenting a standalone immigration bill, so at least we have that piece of legislation that has been rejected by the Republicans.
What was preventing part of it, and probably the bigger part of it, was his daughter and his son-in-law. You know, we have another issue, Ilana. All right, we have the illegal immigration coming over the border, but no one's paying attention to the front door. And the front door I call the education gateway, and how it works. And this is why it's not organic, but it's in your city where you're living out there in the West. They bring in these people through education programs, such as private college, for-profit, non-profit, private colleges. The majority of these people that come to this country are tech workers disguised as students, okay? And they come in, they pay a fee, they go to school for a month or two. But did you know, I don't even know if you're aware of it, and WorldNet Daily never writes about it. I tried to contact Joseph Farah twice. We have students that could be dropped in through education within 30 days and get a $50,000 to $75,000 a year job. Were you aware of that?
No, but I'm perfectly aware of the numbers of legal immigrants who come in, 1 million, up to 1 million or 2 a year, and each principal brings in an entire, if it's the third world, it can be a village.
Right.
So it's exponential. Think about it. One qualified tech worker, which
then you get the wife.
They're not qualified. We have plenty. These are mediocre. The H-1B is a mediocre. I'd love to come on and talk about the HIV. It should
H-1B.
be HIV. Actually,
H-1B.
It's as pernicious. But the H-1B visas, the tech visas, these are mediocre workers. They're not exceptional. The O-1 is the visa for the exceptional geniuses, which is always also being rigged at the moment.
Like
but
an EB-5.
Each principal qualified Chinese or Indian mostly workers displace an American worker. There are about, the IEEE figures, there are about 200,000 unemployed or underemployed American tech workers. And each person is entitled to bring in an entire family.
Yes.
So think about that, and that's an exponential growth in
and then it's an anchor baby,
and generally Democratic voters.
Yeah, and it's also an anchor baby as well. Okay.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I want to have that discussion because I'm really well briefed on the education gateway. I worked in the education system. I saw it, with my own eyes. Okay, and it's the wife comes in second, and then they drop the anchor, and then they bring the mother-in-law and the father-in-law. Are you familiar with the Beltway at all, Ilana? Are you familiar with the surrounding area of Washington, D.C.?
No, I live outside the swamp.
I know that.
We have our own swamp up here in the Pacific Northwest.
No, I know, but there is a Beltway area, and right in Dulles Corridor, which is the Internet Valley, like Silicon Valley, the county is called Loudoun County. Joseph Farah knows it. He lives around that area. And Loudoun County is now Little South Asia. Okay? That was a wine country, cattle country, farm country, second, third, fourth, seventh generation Americans. Now you go there and you think you're in Bangladesh, India, or Pakistan. You don't know where you are. Okay?
Well, apparently this is supposed to be glorious because it's legal. So we have to talk about immigration per se, which the president spoke about and has a magnificent position paper which he ran on. And, of course, you need a Stephen Miller to articulate those ideas, but he's confined to the basement by the Kushners. So that's what we're getting. And look, Colonel, we cannot be ditto heads, as I said. We need to hold leaders to account, even though those we care about and love, like President Trump, or else, as the great Ann Coulter keeps saying, the country's gone.
And we're about 50 feet away from the goal line now.
Absolutely, and I'd love to come back and speak to you about tech and the visas, and that leads straight into the tech mindset, which you floated at the beginning of this segment.
Mm-hmm. And big tech is a big problem. We have another 3.5 to 4 minutes, I think. Probably 3 minutes, Colleen? 3 minutes exactly, Ilana. You go for the 2 minutes, and I'll get the last minute.
Where do I
Whatever.
start?
Whatever.
Well, look, I think the two that I wrote about in Meet the Kushners, the first couple in waiting, there have been enough books to document their ambitions. Every forum, world forum like Davos, which is really a foul place, you'll see, at least we don't see the First Lady Melania shoved aside as much, because I think that we love her, and there was a lot of resentment, the fact that she was, or as I put it in the column, she's ceremonially shivved, to use prison parlance, because we've had prison reform now, but at least Melania does accompany the president, and that's nice to see. But initially, in the first heady days of the administration, you mostly saw Jared and Ivanka trail along everywhere. They're unqualified. This is nepotism. It's not legit, and they need to go. We need to see more of Steve Miller, who is extremely articulate. I'm not so sure that he can begin to articulate the MAGA agenda, which has not been articulated from the White House. Sarah Huckabee Sanders is incapable of doing it, and if we are going to see any immigration legislation, which I think is late in the day, what do you think about?
I think we should have a conversation about Miller. I'll have John have that conversation when he gets back. But we're out of time. Ilana, Mercer, always a pleasure. Thank you for coming back on the last show, and Happy New Year. We'll speak to you soon.
The same to you, Colonel Mike.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.